Be me, Evan, 30, Ops Reliability Coordinator at a mid-size B2B SaaS. Clients are warehouse teams who only remember our logo when trucks stop moving. My job is keeping small failures small so leadership can keep selling always on. Most days feel calm because somebody is quietly absorbing chaos before it spreads. Back then, problems existed, but they ended because an adult would own them. The office looked normal. Good coffee, bad chairs, open plan noise, forced smiles. Behind the smiles lived contracts, penalties, and customers who measure time and money. Pager duty existed because our product touches real docs and real overtime. Green dashboards meant bonuses. Red dashboards meant meetings, and both meant denial. Support triage and incident response held the whole place together like duct tape. Lena, 29, ran triage like a battlefield nurse. Fast questions, clean notes, no drama. Ken, 34, did infrastructure work with rough edges and terrifying accuracy. Miles, 58, staff engineer, moved slow and thought fast, like a tired chess master. Jay, 25, junior on call, learned quickly because mistakes cost sleep and dignity. My seat sat between them, translating urgency into polite language for polite people. Arguments happened openly, fixes happened quickly, postmortems happened without theater. Nobody worshipped men, nobody hated women, and nobody cared about ideology at 3 a.m. Competence mattered because competence kept paychecks from becoming memories. Ken could smell a bad deploy through graphs and sarcasm, which saved us often. Miles could hear a system failing like you hear a car misfire, subtle and real. Jay had fear in the healthy way, the kind that stops you from being reckless. The division of labor wasn't a manifesto, it was a map of comfort and skill. Leadership loved the numbers, even if they never touched the effort behind them. Change arrived wearing a smile and carrying a slide deck full of stock photos. All hands announced Riley, 32, our new head of people and culture. Riley introduced herself as a feminist with a framework, not a fighter with a grin. Confidence poured off her like perfume, expensive, deliberate, hard to ignore. She promised psychological safety, inclusion, and sustainable excellence for everyone. Everyone clapped because clapping ends meetings faster than questions ever do. Ken messaged me, "We hired Vibes as a department," and I told him to relax. Miles did a tiny squint at the screen like he smelled rain in the air. First weeks were coffee chats, gentle questions, long pauses, patient listening. Riley asked why hard incidents ended with the same men speaking the most. Another question landed softly. Do you think speed can be a form of dominance? My answer was simple. The loudest voices were usually the ones with the fix. Riley smiled and said, "Patterns are information, and information is power." That sentence stuck to my brain like grit you can't blink out. Calendar invites followed. Mandatory workshop on psychological safety. Cameras encouraged. Slide 1 showed diverse people laughing at a whiteboard like joy is a KPI. Hero culture got labeled as a disease, not as a tool with a cost. Urgency got framed as a masculine reflex that silences collaboration under stress. Rules arrived in neat bullets: ask, not tell, assume intent, invite perspectives. Public correction became a microaggression, and absolutes became harmful certainty. The promise sounded sweet. We can be excellent without being harsh. Nodding happened because nodding is safe, and safety was the new currency. Policy email arrived with cheerful formatting and a name that sounded protective. Safe Resolution Policy, SRP, like it belonged on a badge and a lanyard. Line 1 said no one person should carry critical decisions on their shoulders. Line 2 required a consensus huddle before remediation for any Severity 1 incident. Line 3 required a culture observer to monitor tone and equitable participation. Rotating incident leads got added to avoid what Riley called power consolidation. SRP got framed as fairness, safety, and opportunity for underrepresented voices. Ken read it twice and whispered, "This is how you die in a fire." Support tried optimism because optimism is cheaper than honesty. Engineering tried silence because silence avoids HR. Ops tried to adapt because ops always adapts until ops cannot. First test arrived on a Tuesday morning, billing events duplicating like rabbits. Customers saw double charges, refunds, angry bank calls, and screenshot threads. Jay paged the channel. Lena opened triage. Ken jumped into logs immediately. Old playbook was simple: freeze deploys, patch worker, backfill data, apologize. SRP demanded a huddle before remediation because impact touches humans. Huddle meant product, finance, support, and a facilitator from people and culture. Bree, 27, always smiling, always timing people, showed up as facilitator. Check-in started the call like it was yoga class, not a fire drill. Ken typed, "We are actively burning money," and Bree replied, "Let's watch tone." Minutes bled while the bug multiplied because code does not care about feelings. Consensus finally formed, patch shipped, queue drained, customers stopped tweeting. Riley celebrated process. See how safe communication prevented panic. Ken stared at his monitor like it insulted his ancestors. Follow-up survey arrived about how the huddle made us feel. Ken typed one word, waste, and that one word became a meeting. Coaching session happened with someone who never held on call and never touched production. Warning followed about repeated negativity and insufficient commitment to values. Ken spoke less and screenshot more because paper trails beat arguments. SRP grew teeth in small ways that looked harmless in isolation. Remediation approvals needed 2 leads, 1 technical, 1 people impact representative. Postmortems required a feelings section and a reflection on inclusion. Incident timelines banned blame words, including mistake, caused, and broke. Verbs got replaced with fog, and fog made everyone slower on purpose. Customers didn't see the fog, they only saw late fixes and careful apologies. Sales pushed back once, then stopped, because sales loves peace too. Riley formed a committee called the Culture Reliability Council, CRC, with a monthly newsletter. Newsletter praised brave sharing, inclusive language, and decentering urgency. Urgent work did not slow down, it just stopped being allowed to look urgent. Stress started hiding under polite words, and polite words became the new armor. Quiet casualties appeared first, the helpers who used to answer fast. Permission became safety, so people waited for permission to speak. Meetings got calmer while on-call nights got heavier, which nobody charted. Friday night, 11:42 p.m., scanning feeds died for 3 big clients at once. Docks filled with drivers, managers screamed, phones lit up like Christmas. Lena triaged like usual, but escalation got stuck behind SRP rules. Consensus huddle required a facilitator because Severity 1 meant high emotion risk. Facilitators were asleep because facilitators don't carry pagers. Ken joined anyway because he was wired wrong in a useful way. 8 lines of fix plan landed in chat, clear, direct, and correct. Bree appeared half awake and replied, "We need shared understanding before action." Ken answered rollback now. Replication is tipping, and the line sounded like command. Bree asked for softer phrasing, and the servers ignored her request. Miles joined and backed Ken, writing, "Rollback is safest, we can do it in 5. Jay asked a timid question, "Are we allowed without CRC approval?" That question hurt more than the outage because it meant fear won. Ken asked for consent like a hostage. Does anyone object to rollback? Silence meant compliance, so rollback went out, and systems came back breathing. Week later, postmortem focused on tone, not the fact we were minutes from disaster. Riley circled Ken's words and called them domination under stress. Ken finally said it's an outage, not group therapy, and the room froze. Riley smiled politely and promised to unpack it later in coaching. Written warning arrived for Ken, citing sarcasm and undermining inclusive leadership. Applications started leaving Ken's browser that same night. Next month, Riley launched Growth Through Redistribution, spreading critical knowledge away from gatekeepers. Execution looked like punishment. Stop asking Ken, stop asking Miles, stop leaning on old patterns. Incident leads now came from an emerging leaders list curated by people and culture. Values alignment mattered more than scar tissue, so the list favored calm presenters. Kara, 28, smart and hardworking, got picked as lead before she was ready. Mentorship meeting with Ken got blocked as unbalanced dependence. Communications coach replaced technical mentoring because language shapes outcomes. Coach taught Kara how to phrase uncertainty with confident softness. Systems do not respect confident softness. Systems respect correct moves. Bree got promoted into leadership rotation because she held space under pressure. Holding space during outages meant delaying fixes to ask how people felt. Customers do not fill out feeling surveys, they fill out penalty invoices. Metrics Riley tracked were harmony, sentiment, and reduced after-hours interventions. Metrics finance tracked were penalties, churn risk, and shrinking renewal confidence. New rule protected employees by reducing on-call pay differentials. Riley called it fairness, saying money shouldn't reward stress and sacrifice. Ken laughed a short, ugly laugh and asked, "Who will reward fixing the fire?" Jay quietly tried to trade out of rotation because pay no longer covered misery. Volunteering stopped, and with it the invisible safety net stopped too. First major churn hit not from one outage, but from 3 small ones stacked together. Each one delayed remediation for the sake of process. Each one ended with a post-mortem about language instead of code. Customer email arrived polite and cold, terminating for operational unreliability. Sales cried quietly. Product blamed support. Support blamed ops. Ops blamed physics. Riley blamed hero culture and demanded recommitment to SRP. Ken resigned on a Wednesday morning with 2 clean sentences and no drama. Farewell note from Riley praised his journey and reminded everyone nobody is irreplaceable. Applause sounded thin, like hands hitting cardboard. Ken's work did not vanish. It scattered into anxious people and stale docs. Week 1 without Ken, a hidden certificate expired and broke one client's SSO. Jay chased it for 6 hours because the notes were wrong and the owner was gone. Riley asked why suffering alone happened instead of collaborating more. Jay scheduled a huddle, 40 minutes of talk, 5 minutes of fix. Angry customer anyway. Week 2. Without Ken, queue backlog grew because one tuning knob was forgotten. Kara found it by accident, and Riley praised her for bringing her whole self. Kara looked exhausted, not empowered, and that scared me. Week 3 without Ken, vendor outage hit, and we needed a workaround fast. Miles built the workaround and waited for SRP approval, like a man at a border checkpoint. Huddle delayed action. Vendor stayed down. Clients started asking about alternatives. Competitors love our mistakes because competitors can't buy our clients any cheaper than we donate them. Riley added, respectful inquiry rules, forcing critique to be framed as questions. Example line said, I'm curious how this supports shared goals. During outages, we became curious while the building burned. Miles stopped volunteering context because questions became traps. He used to fix fast and explain later. Now he explained carefully and fixed last. Riley called that thoughtful leadership while we lost seconds like blood. The breaking point began with a calendar and pastel markers. Riley scheduled a half-day retreat called Reimagining Reliability. Retreat landed the day before our biggest seasonal traffic spike. Ops begged to move it, and Riley said we don't pause humanity for business cycles. Business cycles did not pause for our humanity. Friday morning sat in a rented room with worksheets about our relationship with urgency. Alerts buzzed anyway because systems don't RSVP. Scan ingestion delayed, then stopped. Then alarms stacked like bricks. Warehouse clients called because their weekend shift was already lean and angry. Riley told me to be present for the exercise and handed my phone back like a lesson. Something in my brain went quiet to survive the absurdity. Lena whispered we need to step out, and Riley said trust the process. Process was paper, and paper did not fix servers. Stepping out happened because reality eventually wins even in HR rooms. Cascading failure traced to a deploy that needed a fast rollback. SRP demanded a huddle, so we held a Severity 1 call under fluorescent lights beside sticky notes. Kara led, hands shaking, eyes darting between charts and Riley's face. Miles typed rollback steps and waited like a man asking permission to breathe. Riley asked if rollback might harm confidence in our new pipeline. Jay asked if he should notify clients, and Riley warned against panic language. Lena drafted a plain update anyway because Lena chooses outcomes. Time to recover stretched past SLA because decision-making had become theater. One client invoked penalty clauses live, voice icy, words precise. CFO joined the call and stayed silent, which sounded expensive. Rollback finally happened, systems stabilized, but the damage was already inked. Monday, all hands turned gray and short, with no pastel and no jokes. CEO asked why alignment took 40 minutes while revenue burned. Riley framed it as urgency dysregulation and dominance patterns under pressure. CFO asked for numbers, and numbers do not respect dysregulation. Board demanded an investigation, and Riley heard backlash and patriarchy. Riley tightened policy again, banning direct assignments in Slack as hierarchy recreation. Requests had to be phrased as invitations. Invitations during outages feel like writing poetry while drowning. People complied because non-compliance became career suicide. Compliance looked like silence because silence is the safest invitation. Talent started leaving in staggered exits that looked manageable on paper. One senior back-end guy left citing culture mismatch with a careful smile. Another left to join Ken at arrival because Ken was building a sane team. Riley called departures necessary evolution, and finance called them missing limbs. Men didn't sabotage, they simply stopped saving us, then they left quietly. Support escalations rose in volume, then in severity, then in lawyer tone. Support started quitting too, because being yelled at for our delays is its own burnout. Lena stayed longer than anyone because pride is welded to duty. Retention bonuses got requested, and Riley rejected them as rewarding hero behavior. On-call pay increases got requested, and Riley rejected them as monetizing stress. Temporary freeze on culture initiatives got requested, and Riley rejected it as dehumanizing. Lena looked at me and asked, "Does she notice humans are quitting?" Notice arrived when the second biggest client churned. Polite email, cold decision. Riley tried to schedule an exit interview with the customer, and the customer declined. Emergency leadership meeting happened. Riley brought sentiment charts like armor. CFO asked why sentiment rose while revenue fell. Riley said safety increased even during transformation. CFO said payroll can't be paid with feelings. Riley called that language violent and harmful. CEO asked for a recovery plan that involved fewer outages and more retention. Riley offered more facilitation, more enforcement, and expanded people and culture headcount. Engineering leaders were scarce now because we had pushed them out one by one. Reality became logs, penalties, churn, missed deadlines, and burnout. Narrative became safety, inclusion, alignment, and long-term health. Riley lived inside narrative because narrative made her powerful. Power showed itself when Miles became the next target. Miles wrote on a doc that SRP delays remediation and increases operational risk. HR investigation opened on communication harm and intimidating certainty. Witness interviews asked how Miles's words made people feel. Nobody wanted to say it felt true because truth gets you in trouble. Answers turned vague to survive politics. Performance improvement plan landed on Miles's desk for tone and collaboration deficits. Miles read it, nodded once, and said, "Thank you for clarifying." 2 days later, he resigned with a calm email and no drama. Riley told the company nobody is irreplaceable, and that phrase aged like milk. Week after Miles left, a latent bug slipped into constraint logic and pulled schedules sideways. Warehouses missed windows by minutes, then hours, then full shifts. Drivers idled, fuel burned. Managers blamed their teams, then blamed our software. Teams spent 2 days debating shared understanding while the pattern screamed obvious. Fix arrived late, and the client's trust arrived already dead. Riley responded by launching Accountability Without Blame, removing owner names from timelines. Without owners, nothing moved quickly because accountability had been outlawed. Collective responsibility turned into collective paralysis, and paralysis looked peaceful. Investors asked sharp questions on quarterly calls, and Riley couldn't ban investor tone. One investor asked why time to recover doubled in 6 months. CEO looked tired in a deep way, because the answer would expose our self-inflicted wound. Riley wanted to protect culture narrative, and the market wanted uptime. Confidence cracked in Riley's face, then hardened, like righteousness under threat. Insurance carrier noticed our breach pattern and demanded a third-party operational audit before renewal. 2 auditors arrived, one accountant, one ex-SRE, both allergic to buzzwords and patience. Their first question was blunt: who is authorized to make emergency changes at 2 a.m.? SRP document got printed, and the ex-SRE laughed once, then stopped laughing quickly. He pointed at consensus huddle and asked how a huddle outruns a cascading failure. Riley answered with values language, and the accountant asked for the delta in downtime minutes. Numbers showed we were slower by design, and the room went quiet in a new way. Auditors requested incident transcripts, and HR redacted half the words to protect psychological safety. XSRE asked to interview Miles, and we had to admit Miles already walked out. That admission landed like a bill because talent loss is a metric you cannot reframe. Riley responded by launching ToneBot in Slack, auto-flagging words like urgent, now, and broken. ToneBot made people type like lawyers, and outages started feeling like crime scenes. Final move came as an engineering restructure proposal dressed as liberation. Incident response would dissolve into embedded reliability partners to avoid gatekeeping. Nobody would be accountable for uptime anymore, which was the point and the poison. Senior men got shifted into support roles to reduce dominant influence. Those men were the last ones still fixing invisible fires. Sam, 37, quietly asked for a reference and left. Noor, 33, said nothing, accepted an offer, and disappeared in 2 weeks. Departure emails landed like snow, quiet, steady, unstoppable. Stay interviews happened, and people lied because honesty is punished and silence is rewarded. Leadership thought we had time because exits were staggered, not explosive. Holiday weekend arrived, traffic spiked, staffing ran lean, and a config change slipped through. Reviewers stayed silent to avoid conflict, so the change shipped unchallenged. Auth tokens broke across a region, and clients lost access at once. Phones lit, inbox flooded, Slack screamed, and SRP huddle got demanded again. Huddle happened, but half the right people were gone now. Kara led, Lena triaged, Jay panicked quietly, and Riley corrected phrasing mid-fire. Someone typed, "We need to move," and Riley replied, "Please avoid urgency pressure." CEO joined and wrote, "Fix it now," and that sentence violated SRP beautifully. Riley tried to correct the CEO's tone gently and publicly. CEO ignored it because survival beats process when the cliff shows itself. Rollback executed, system returned, but the damage went beyond downtime. Procurement reviews opened, and procurement reviews are breakups pretending to be conversations. Finance calculated service credits and looked pale. Board scheduled a closed-door meeting and did not invite Riley. Riley called it backlash and patriarchy because blame is easier than humility. Binders and moral certainty walked into the boardroom anyway. Board asked for immediate stabilization and retention, not for a worldview. Riley offered more SRP, more policy, more culture headcount, and more training. Board asked for evidence policy improved outcomes, and charts did not look good. Sentiment graphs appeared again, and uptime graphs looked like a slow death. Containment decision happened, Riley removed from operational policy influence. Termination didn't come yet, just a cage built out of corporate language. Riley left furious and told her team they were under attack. Enforcement got tighter for a week because scared people cling to rules. HR opened a case on Lena for bypassing process during the holiday incident. Lena resigned on Tuesday and triage collapsed because judgment can't be replaced by forms. CEO hired an external ops consultant. Old school, blunt, allergic to vibes. Consultant read logs, read timelines, and asked why remediation waited for permission. Report said SRP increased time to recover and reduced accountability. Report said morale metrics were cosmetic, while operational health declined. Report said talent loss clustered around punishment of competence and fear of action. Board read it, CFO nodded, CEO sighed, and a decision finally got made. Private equity came in fast, bought cheap, promised turnaround, and cut deep. Riley didn't get fired, which was the strangest part. She got repositioned. New title appeared, Director of Operational Integrity, and the irony tasted metallic. Engineering became outsourced to a vendor that charged by the hour and fixed by the book. After-hours interventions dropped 80% because vendors don't work for applause. Riley posted on LinkedIn about ending hero culture and building sustainable governance. Likes poured in from people who never held a pager and never watched a dock freeze. Comments called her brave, necessary, visionary, and a model for the industry. Meanwhile, outsourced engineers ran rigid playbooks and billed overtime anyway. 2 months later, I left, because staying meant being an extra in someone else's narrative. New job landed at a smaller company where accountability was not treated like violence. First on-call incident there felt clean. One lead decided, others supported, fix shipped. Breathing returned to my lungs like it had been missing air for a year. Coffee shop encounter happened 6 months later with an old coworker. He looked thinner and said the old place didn't die. It hollowed out like a tree. He said the product still ran, but the soul was outsourced, and customers knew. He also said the funniest part, Miles was consulting for the vendor now. Systems that punished his competence now rented it at double the rate. Text from Miles arrived on my phone one night, short and calm. Message said, "Heard you landed somewhere sane. Glad you got out." Question about Riley came out of me because curiosity is a bad habit. Miles replied, "She'll call it sabotage, not consequence, because consequence requires humility." Last twist hit when my new company pitched to a huge prospect. Prospect was a warehouse giant the old place lost during the governance era. Their CTO asked one question: who decides when the system burns? Answer was simple: an adult decides fast, then documents, then learns. Contract signed a week later because they wanted responsibility, not a committee. Driving home that night felt lighter than it should, like winning without fighting. Victory wasn't arguing inside the old place because arguments there were judged by tone. Winning was leaving and letting bad governance starve without your competence feeding it.